Hello everyone, it's Graveyard Ghosts, and I am just leaving off a pathway off of the main parkway here in Gatlinburg. Today I am going to take you up to one of those hidden treasures here in Gatlinburg. I guarantee that probably 99.9% of the time, if you ask any of your friends or family if they've been to the graveyard or even knew a graveyard existed in Gatlinburg, they'll tell you, no, never knew that. Well, today we're going to take a look at it. And I'm taking you up this alleyway which goes to the cemetery. Now this particular cemetery I find to be a little bit out of the ordinary. See, what I mean by that, I don't necessarily experience a lot of spirit activity here, but there's other types of activity known to linger in this cemetery. We're approaching it now. Well known at the cemetery, poltergeists. Many people have been tripped, pushed, scratched in this particular cemetery. Poltergeists like to show activity if they're being taunted. Even if you touch a gravestone, a marker, or anything like that, that's considered taunting. Also, this particular graveyard has shadow people. Now the shadow people linger in a tree that's in the center of the cemetery. I call it the haunted tree. There's also 3 very large oak trees to the far left-hand side. They linger heavily over in that area. You can actually even hear them stepping, especially now with the leaves, and lingering over in that area. And believe me, it's not squirrels, it's not a dog, it's not a bear, it's shadow people. They also like to hop around and linger and sit on top of the tombstones. It's another thing they love to do. Now, the third thing that this cemetery has is the Gatlinburg Witch. Now, the Gatlinburg Witch, the tale I'll tell you so you understand who she is. There was a young man who was hunting for wild turkey. This area also has a lot of wild turkey, as you know, bears, but more wild turkey. He saw the biggest one he'd ever seen. Wanted to catch it for his dinner. So he followed it and chased after it, took him down to the creek. Well, when he got to the creek, he saw the most beautiful woman standing in it. She had lily white skin, hair blonde, and a black cloak. She started to disrobe. Well, he figured, I'm a young man, she's a young woman, she doesn't know I'm watching. I'm going to go ahead and take a peek. So he stayed around. Then the most horrifying thing happened, and he wished he had left. She did start to disrobe, took everything off. But then when she was finally naked, she stood there in the creek, reached down into her cloak, and pulled out a knife. She made a slice underneath her left breast. Then she made a slice on her belly. Then she just kept slicing. Well, every time that she did a slice, a black crow would fly out. See, she was what was called a nesting witch. Now, a nesting witch is one that incubates items inside their body until they're ready to release them. In her case, it was black crows. Each time she did a slice, a black crow would fly out. It's actually said that all the black crows in Gatlinburg are descendants from the ones that she cut out of her body. Now I have to tell you, on an early morning one time, about 5:30, I did come and I did hear a crow squawk 3 times exactly. I didn't see anything. Whether that was her, I don't know. Because what she does is at nighttime, she lingers in the back. And she lingers heavily in the back of the cemetery, pacing back and forth. Now let me do a little briefing here. The cemetery also has a guardian. I like to leave an offering, which is a penny. I also leave a little bit of candy. Skittles are their choice of treat. Now Skittles, I don't know if it's the sugar or what, but that's what they like. Guardian, I'm gonna pass. I mean no harm. Everything will be just as it is. We leave nothing, we take nothing. Now I have to tell you, in death, the spirits like what they liked in life. Now that would be alcohol, cigars, cigarettes, food, sweets, treats. That's why I leave a penny. Shows my welcome into here. The guardian also is known as the first person to be buried in the cemetery. Now sometimes they would put a dog or a vagrant. That would take care of the first person buried, because the guardian, they are the one that has to watch over the spirits in the cemetery to make sure that they all are kept safe. Now this is what I call the haunted tree. The shadow people do like to linger in this. I'll show you up toward the top. If you're lucky, you might catch something. I have seen them sitting in this tree before. I usually don't bring an EMF to this particular cemetery, frankly because I don't find, like I said, too much spirit activity. But usually if there's any, it is around this tree. And now I'm going to take us over to one of the other areas that I find to be haunted. Now I will also let you know that White Oak Flats is the name of this cemetery. Now White Oak Flats is what Gatlinburg used to be called. Now, the way that it came about was that Mr. Ogle and his brother, actually the Ogle brothers, had a general store that was over where the Mountain Mall is. The Mountain Mall is located down at the end of the parkway. Now the Ogle brothers had their general store there. Now not too far up the parkway, Mr. Gatlin, Radford Gatlin, built his general store. So now you had competition. Mr. Ogle did not like that. But also, nobody liked Gatlin. He was the most hated man in town. Actually, the only person that liked him was Mr. Reagan. Now, Mr. Reagan had his post office at Gatlin's general store. He was the postmaster. He actually worshipped Gatlin. So much, in fact, that he said, I'm going to rename the town and call it Gatlinburg, which he did. Well, the town people, they figured it's not worth taking a vote or messing around with. Let's do this. So what they did, they decided to tell Gatlin that if he would leave town and never come back, that they would honor him and name the town Gatlinburg. Well, that's what they did. And that's how the name came about, and it stuck. So Gatlinburg is now still the same for all these years. So no more White Oak Flats. Now I'll show you a lot of the tombstones here in this area are stone markers. A lot of them have even fallen into the ground, unfortunately. I'm going up toward the top. Remember, the witch lingers. Did you hear that? There might have been a shadow person. The witch lingers in the back up here. All night long, she paces back and forth. And then she gets on top of the fence at daybreak, sits, and then vanishes. Let's see what this tombstone is. It's an old one there. You can't read it though. Now over here, we have markings of tombstones all over, but there's 3 large oak trees. Now, these particular oak trees are where the shadow people linger. Now, the shadow people you can find sometimes lingering in the tree themselves or toward the trunk areas. It's also not uncommon that they do appear as orbs, and not normally the traditional round white orbs. A lot of times they will manifest and be in pastel colors, such as pink, blue, green, sometimes yellow. Also, I will tell you that this particular area is where you can hear the shadow people walk. Now, the shadow people, when they walk in this particular area, you can hear the leaves crinkle. But believe me, it's not a squirrel. It's not a dog. It's shadow people. It's not a bear. It's shadow people. Also, there's 3 trees that have been cut in this cemetery. I find their stumps usually have activity also. Again, more rocks. Also interesting is there's a gentleman who used to work at the sawmill, which was over at Elkmont. Now, his leg was cut off by one of the saws. His name was Ogles and Reagans. Now, his leg is buried at one of the cemeteries over on Roaring Fork. When he died several years later, the rest of his body is actually buried here. So his body, minus the one leg, is actually in this cemetery. They never did bring the leg over. They left everything resting in peace as it was buried. But we are over at the trees now. I'm gonna pan up into them to see if you might get something or see something. And then I'm gonna go pan below. Now, the parkway is down below, so you have to debunk yourself in this area. But most of the time when the orbs appear that you can take for fact are the ones that will appear within the trunk space themselves. So again, I'll pan up into the tree. Do you hear that? Like a little step. I'm hearing stuff in the back too. Like I said, normally that's the witch that's up there, but this particular area over here is where you'll hear the shadow people more times than not going through. That noise is actually me going through the leaves, so that's when I stop to let you have our chance to see if we hear anything as we pan. Can you hear that? Up by that tree. And sometimes it's difficult with the sound. Now also, I'll show you over in this area. You can kind of see lights beyond us here. Oh, and it looks like we've got some orbs hanging around in the background there. But the lights are a mini golf. Now, some people will tell you that there are bodies buried underneath the mini golf. That's not true. The cemetery never did extend over into that area. It is what it is here, and never was. There's over 600 bodies actually buried in this cemetery. Now this tombstone is interesting because it's all crooked. The corner's actually facing me, when it should be facing this way. Unfortunately, I cannot make out what the name is because it's been worn so much with weather. A lot of times what they do is they'll put another marker, a newer marker in, sometimes the copper flat ones with the names on it, just so there's a remembrance. There's a lot of family histories here. The Ogles and the Reagans and Teasters are three big names, and they will always be found at various cemeteries across the Great Smoky Mountains. This is actually one of the bigger ones with over 600 people in it. Many of the cemeteries in the area were family owned. Just family buried on them. There's another little orb. See it? Where's it going? It's down on the lower right, moving around. Well, it's just having a good time, ain't it? But let's go ahead. Oh, there. Moving. But I wanted to show you these tombstones over here. Oh, there he went. These are just stones that are falling over. And the tombs on this side go all the way. These graves are not in a straight line either, so they are kind of mix and match. So I always say, sorry if I step on anybody because of that fact. Here's some rocks just laying. A lot of them have fallen over and then they just grow into the ground. Here's one that's fallen. Here's another stump. I've never found any activity at this particular stump itself. There is another little marker in front. And it is uncommon that, or it is common that on the stumps here they lay the marker against the stump to keep it standing up in place instead of falling over and having a chance of disappearing forever once in the ground. Now there are a couple over here I'll show you that have like a brick monument put on them. Then next to it we have the old stone. I was just listening because I heard stuff in the back up there. A lot of times you're down here and there's no way you can make it up there to see what it was. As I said, a lot of generations and generations of some of these names, and so that's why you may still see remembrances put with the flowers and such. This is Martha Ogle. Now, this is a monument for Martha Ogle, though it is said that it's possible that she could be buried over underneath the mountain, what is now the Mountain Mall. Prior to that, the Ogle brothers, and prior to that, obviously vacant land. There also was a gentleman called Bohannon. Now, Bohannon was crossing the river with a bag of sugar. He fell off of the little bridge going across the river and fell to his death. Now, his body is buried over there. He was actually the first person that was buried in Gatlinburg before the cemetery was here. It's said that she was the second. So whether she's here or whether she's over there, it's not kind of known, that I would take it that her memorial is here. So this is where her body would be buried. You will find these stones over here to be very close together. These are more Ogles that are buried over in this part of the cemetery. Again, these may have headstones and footstones on them. And Ogles continue in the back there. More little markers over here. And usually I find this left-hand side is more active. Over on the right-hand side is usually active with the poltergeist. So that's normally where they would linger. Shadow people pretty much linger on this side too, from the center all the way over to those trees. Some people that are buried here I have seen before in the daylight that they were born in the 1700s with their deaths in the 1800s. There you can see another it's wanting to follow us around, whatever it is. There it goes zipping by again. But now what I do is I like to say a little blessing when we leave. Just trying to follow that around to debunk it. So it's not moving here. There it shows up again. Comes and goes, so I'd have to say that most likely those are orbs. Now, I am here at the sign again, the White Oak Flats Cemetery sign. I'll say good wishes to the guardian. And again, I left a penny to say we entered. Guardian, thank you for letting us visit. We left everything as is. We took nothing. We destroyed nothing. We thank you for allowing us to pass. If there were any spirits that followed us out, have them go back into the cemetery. No one follows us home. Angels surround us to keep us safe. Aye, Bobo. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed our little adventure tonight. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.